started with a man standing at a gas pump, holding his wallet with trembling hands. His little daughter watched from the car, wondering why her father's eyes filled with tears. No one could have predicted what would happen next, or who would come to his rescue. Before we start into today's story, let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from? And if our stories touch your heart, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us reach our first 1,000 subscribers and bring you more inspiring stories every day. On a cold Tuesday evening in Ohio, Daniel Brooks stood at the gas station, his fingers gripping a faded leather wallet. His truck was almost empty, the fuel gauge needle pressed hard against the red. In the back seat, his 7-year-old daughter Lily hummed a tune softly, unaware of her father's quiet despair. The pump clicked, but Daniel didn't press the handle yet. He looked down at the last crumpled bills in his hand, barely enough for a gallon or two. His throat tightened. He had worked double shifts at a factory, yet life seemed cruelly heavier with every passing day. Behind him, another customer sighed impatiently. Daniel's hands shook as he slid the money into the machine, his reflection on the screen catching the faint gleam of tears he could no longer hold back. That night, on a forgotten corner of town, a father's struggle reached the breaking point, and unknowingly, his silent cry would soon echo far beyond this empty gas station. Daniel wasn't always this way, bent under the weight of unpaid bills and loneliness. 5 years earlier, he was a husband, a proud provider, a man who laughed often. But after his wife Sarah passed away suddenly from an illness, Daniel's life unraveled piece by piece. Grief pressed on his chest like a stone that never lifted. Raising Lily alone became both his salvation and his hardest fight. Every lunchbox packed, every bedtime story read, was fueled by love but shadowed by exhaustion. Friends slowly drifted away, unable to sit long with his pain. The factory job barely covered rent, let alone unexpected expenses. Tonight was one of those nights. The truck needed gas so he could make it to work in the morning. But the math didn't add up. He looked back at Lily's innocent face through the window. She waved at him with a smile, holding up her stuffed rabbit. He forced a smile back, though inside he felt a man breaking. The pump finally clicked, stopping at $5.37. That was all the money Daniel had allowed himself to spend. Just enough, he hoped, to make it to payday. He returned to the driver's seat, closing the door with a heavy sigh. Lily's curious eyes searched his face. "Daddy, why are you sad?" Her voice was light, but it cut deeper than any blade. Daniel swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel. "I'm just tired, sweetheart. That's all." But Lily wasn't convinced. She reached out her small hand and touched his arm. "You don't have to cry, Daddy. I love you." Tears finally spilled down his cheeks. He turned away, ashamed that his daughter had to witness his weakness. Outside, neon lights flickered over cracked pavement. A man at the next pump noticed Daniel wiping his eyes but said nothing. People usually didn't. The world kept spinning while quiet battles like his stayed unseen. Daniel started the truck, headlights casting long beams down the empty road, never knowing that tonight's quiet breakdown would ripple into something extraordinary. At the factory the next morning, Daniel kept his head down, moving boxes with aching arms. His coworkers joked and laughed during lunch breaks, but he stayed silent, eating a cheap sandwich wrapped in wax paper. The supervisor barked orders, indifferent to anyone's struggles. Daniel clocked out late, shoulders hunched from both work and worry. Bills sat unopened on his kitchen table, stacked like a wall he couldn't climb. Electricity warning notices, overdue rent slips, medical statements, they surrounded him like enemies in his own home. That night, as Lily slept in her small bed, hugging her stuffed rabbit, Daniel sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the ceiling. He whispered a prayer he wasn't sure anyone could hear. "I'm trying. God, I'm trying. Please, just give me a sign." His words broke into the quiet house like fragile glass. Outside, in the stillness of the night, something unseen began moving. Strangers he'd never met were about to become part of his story in ways he could not imagine. Unknown to Daniel, a man at the gas station last night had filmed a brief moment on his phone. Just a glimpse of a father wiping his eyes as he stood by the pump. The video, raw and unpolished, found its way onto social media with a simple caption. "This broke me, single dad struggling at the pump." The clip spread faster than wildfire. By morning, hundreds of comments poured in, people offering prayers, others criticizing the world's indifference. Among those who saw it was a group not often associated with quiet kindness, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. To outsiders, they were rebels, leather vests, roaring engines, a reputation that stirred fear. But within their brotherhood, they carried unspoken codes of loyalty, protection, and unexpected generosity. One of their members, a grizzled rider named Mark Bear Hastings, watched the clip late at night. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. He saw more than a man in tears. He saw a father on the edge of breaking, and he knew something had to be done. The next day, Daniel pulled into the gas station again, dreading the moment he'd have to count coins to make the pump stop early. His truck rattled from neglect, the muffler whining as he parked. He stepped out, head low, gripping his wallet like a lifeline. But today the air felt different. A low rumble stirred in the distance, faint at first, like thunder rolling from the horizon. Then it grew louder, heavier, shaking the pavement beneath his boots. Daniel turned his head. From the curve of the road, motorcycles appeared, one, then two, then dozens. 40 riders, leather vests glinting, engines roaring in unison, stormed into the lot like an army. The gas station attendants froze, customers stepped back. Daniel's heart raced. He instinctively reached for Lily's hand, pulling her close. Fear flashed in his eyes. Why here? Why now? The bike circled into neat lines, their engines cutting in near-perfect harmony. Then silence fell, heavy and complete. 40 Hells Angels stood facing Daniel, their presence overwhelming, yet their eyes calm, steady. Daniel's first instinct was to protect Lily. He held her small shoulders, whispering, "Stay behind me." The men dismounted, boots crunching on gravel. Their leather jackets bore the emblem of skull wings, patches stitched from years on the road. To Daniel, they looked like trouble. He braced himself, his chest tightening. One of them stepped forward, bare, tall and broad, his beard streaked with gray, his voice gravelly but steady. He lifted a hand, palm open, signaling no harm. "You Daniel Brooks?" Daniel nodded hesitantly, unsure how they knew his name. Bear glanced at the truck, then back at Daniel's worn face. "We saw you yesterday. Saw the video. You shouldn't have to fight this alone." Daniel blinked, confused, his grip on Lily tightening. The other riders began pulling envelopes from their vests, laying them gently on the hood of his truck. No words, no explanations, just quiet, deliberate actions. Daniel's breath caught as one envelope fell open, revealing folded bills inside. His knees felt weak. He couldn't comprehend what was happening. Bear stepped closer, his shadow tall against the flickering lights. "We're not here to scare you, brother. We're here to stand with you." His words were low but carried weight. Daniel's eyes darted from the envelopes piling on his truck to the faces of the men who placed them there. Some were hardened, scarred from lives on the edge. Yet in their eyes was something Daniel hadn't seen in a long time: compassion. One rider knelt down to Lily's level. He smiled softly, removing a small patch from his vest, handing it to her like a treasure. "For you, little angel," he said. Lily's eyes lit up, clutching it tightly. Daniel swallowed hard, his voice cracking. I don't understand. Why me?" Bear placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because yesterday you stood alone. Today you don't have to." Silence filled the lot, broken only by the soft clink of envelopes. Daniel's tears returned, but this time, they weren't born of despair, they were born of something else entirely. Daniel opened one envelope with trembling fingers. His eyes widened at the sight of crisp bills stacked inside. He opened another, more money, more support. Each rider had contributed quietly, without fanfare. It wasn't just gas money. It was rent. It was groceries. It was breathing room. He looked up, stunned, his lips trembling. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. Bear shook his head. "Every man fighting for his kid deserves help. Don't ever believe otherwise." Around them, the world seemed to pause. Passers-by stood frozen, phones capturing the moment, but the riders ignored the cameras. This wasn't for show. It was for Daniel and Lily. One man brought out a paper bag, handing it to Daniel. Inside were grocery cards, gift vouchers, even a note scrawled in rough handwriting. "For you and your little girl. Stay strong." Daniel covered his face with his hands, overwhelmed. Lily tugged on his sleeve, smiling wide. "Daddy, we can buy real cereal now." His laughter broke through his tears, raw, relieved, human. The gas station, once just a place of struggle, became a stage for something larger than life. Daniel filled his tank fully for the first time in months. The pump clicked past numbers that once terrified him. This time he smiled through tears. The riders stood silently, engines off, arms crossed, guardians of a moment too sacred for words. Bear finally spoke again, his tone softer now. "Don't mistake this for charity. This is respect. You're a father fighting every day. That's something we honor." Daniel nodded, unable to speak, his throat too tight. He shook Bear's hand firmly, feeling the strength of a man who had lived hard but still chose kindness. Lily climbed into the truck, holding her patch proudly. "Look, Daddy, I'm part of their team now," she giggled. For the first time in years, Daniel's chest felt lighter. Not because his problems vanished, but because he no longer carried them alone. The roar of engines soon followed, but their silence had already said enough. As the riders prepared to leave, Daniel stepped forward, still trembling. "Wait, how can I ever repay you?" Bear looked at him, shaking his head. "You don't. You live. You love that little girl. You keep going. That's all the payback we need." One by one, the riders mounted their bikes, helmets snapping on. Engines roared to life, a thunder that shook the ground. People in the lot covered their ears, but Daniel heard something else in that sound: strength. Unity. A reminder that hope could arrive in unexpected forms. Lily pressed her face against the truck's window, watching in awe. "They're like superheroes, Daddy," she whispered. Daniel smiled, brushing her hair gently. "Yeah, baby, the kind that ride on two wheels." With a final nod, Bear revved his bike and led the procession out. 40 Hell's Angels rolled into the distance, disappearing like a storm passing over. But the echo of their presence lingered, not in noise, but in the silence they left behind. Driving home that night, Daniel's mind replayed every detail. The weight of bills and burdens hadn't vanished, but something had shifted inside him. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Lily sat beside him, munching crackers, humming happily. The patch she had been given lay on her lap like a medal of honor. Streetlights flickered across her face, and Daniel thought about Sarah. He whispered softly into the night, "I wish you could have seen this. Maybe you sent them to us." The road stretched ahead, no longer suffocating but open, full of possibility. At home, he stacked the envelopes neatly on the kitchen table. He didn't rush to spend them. Instead, he sat with Lily, laughing as they planned what groceries they'd buy, which bills they'd finally clear. For once, hope didn't feel like a stranger. It felt like a guest who had knocked, entered, and promised to stay a while. And it had arrived on the backs of men the world least expected. The following week, word of what happened spread across town. Some people were skeptical. Others were inspired. Neighbors dropped by with casseroles, slipping small bills into Daniel's hand, saying little but meaning much. At the factory, co-workers who once overlooked him now clapped him on the back. "Saw the video, Brooks. You deserve it, man." Daniel wasn't sure he deserved anything, but he knew he was grateful. Lily, in her innocence, told her classmates proudly, "40 superheroes helped my daddy." Teachers smiled, unsure how to respond, but something about the story touched everyone who heard it. Meanwhile, the writers stayed silent. No interviews, no statements, no attention-seeking. Their act remained wordless, as if spoken kindness might break its sacredness. And Daniel? He carried the moment like a lantern in the dark, a reminder that sometimes salvation comes not from those we expect, but from strangers who hear your silent cry and decide to answer. Yet, challenges didn't disappear overnight. Rent still demanded payment, factory shifts still wore Daniel down, and grief still crept in at night when Lily was asleep. But something inside him had changed. He no longer saw himself as invisible. He no longer felt entirely alone. One evening, he took Lily. The attendant recognized him and waved warmly. A couple in line whispered, pointing gently, not with judgment, but with quiet respect. Lily tugged at his jacket. "Daddy, do you think they'll come back?" He crouched down, looking into her bright eyes. "Maybe not, sweetheart, but what they gave us, it's here forever." He tapped her chest, then his own. She giggled, wrapping her arms around his neck. In that embrace, Daniel realized the true gift wasn't the money. It was dignity restored, hope renewed, and the reminder that even broken men could rise again. Months passed, but the story lived on. Whenever Daniel saw motorcycles on the road, his heart lifted. At the grocery store, he sometimes found Lily proudly showing her patch to strangers, explaining how the angels on bikes had saved her daddy. Daniel worked harder, not from desperation but from determination. Slowly, debts shrank, life steadied. He even began speaking with a counselor, finally facing the grief that had long weighed him down. The envelopes had paid more than bills, they had opened doors inside him he thought were sealed shut. One quiet evening, Daniel sat on the porch, watching Lily chase fireflies in the yard. The hum of a motorcycle echoed faintly down the highway. He smiled, whispering again to the night, "Thank you." In his heart, he knew it wasn't about being rescued. It was about being reminded that love and compassion still existed in places the world often misunderstood. And that truth carried him forward, step by step, mile by mile. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel took Lily to a park across town. Families laughed, children ran barefoot, the smell of barbecue drifted through the air. Daniel watched Lily play, her laughter free of worry, and he felt peace, a rare, precious thing. As he sat on a bench, an older man approached, dressed simply, without leather or patches. "You're Brooks, right?" the man asked. Daniel nodded cautiously. The man extended his hand. "Name's John. I ride with the boys. Just wanted to check in." Daniel shook his hand firmly, surprised by the visit. John sat beside him, eyes on the children playing. "We don't do what we did for applause, but we do it to remind folks' families everything. You keep your chin up, son." Daniel's chest tightened. "I don't know how to ever thank you." John smiled faintly. "Live well. That's thanks enough." Then he stood, walked away without another word, disappearing into the crowd like a ghost, a reminder that angels didn't always need wings. Daniel's life, though still modest, slowly bloomed again. He found small joys in morning pancakes with Lily, in fixing the truck without dread, in laughter that came easier. At work, he earned respect not through pity but through perseverance. Coworkers noticed his renewed spirit, his willingness to help others carry loads heavier than their own. One younger worker confided in him about struggling to afford rent. Daniel reached into his pocket, handing over a folded bill. "It's not much, but it'll help." The young man looked at him, surprised. Daniel simply smiled. "Someone once did the same for me." It was then he realized. The gift he'd received